Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by the wonderful members over at grandtheftworld.com. This week in Grand Theft World news, we're going to cover topics like, remember Martin Luther King? He had a dream. Well, he never lived to see his dream turn into a woke nightmare. This week, Boston unveiled a sculpture attributed to the honor of the good Dr. Martin Luther King. I don't know that the public really appreciates it in his memory. I don't think he would appreciate it in his memory.
Celebrating Boston's newest monument, the city unveiled the Embrace, a sculpture on Boston Common and a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. The couple met here in Boston. WBZ's Paul Burton is on Boston Common with today's memorable ceremony.
Those hands, it's just a remarkable statement of mutual love and solidarity.
It was a historic and monumental day in Boston as a long-awaited Embrace statue of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King was unveiled, and the family of Dr. King stood in amazement.
Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
And the nonprofit Embrace Boston raised $8 million to create the sculpture and an additional $2.5 million to preserve it. Organizers say people will come from all over the world to view this sculpture and take it all in.
Oh my God!
Next, we're going to learn about the artist, formerly known as the vice president, and his little Fed Corvette, and where these documents stored in his garage, where Hunter is probably hanging out doing crack, where these documents have been stored and how that differs. As the mainstream media will tell you, it's very different than Mar-a-Lago being raided and former President Trump and all these sort of things. The two types of classified documents unsecured at their homes are different, but the same.
Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special counsel to investigate the presence of documents with classified markings found at President Biden's home in Wilmington and an office in Washington. That's right. Not only is former President Trump now under investigation for potentially mishandling classified documents after he left office, so is the current president, Joe Biden, for doing the same after he left office when he was the vice president. And they found documents at not just one, but two Biden locations. So here is...
Did you see the new... I think I could be wrong. They said we found a third document. And Democrats like, you planted that.
They're going to keep turning up. So here is Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, announcing the probe.
The FBI went to the location and secured those documents. On January 5th, 2023, Mr. Lausch briefed me on the results of his initial investigation and advised me that further investigation by a special counsel was warranted. Based on Mr. Lausch's initial investigation, I concluded that, under the special counsel regulations, it was in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. In the days since, while Mr. Lausch continued the investigation, the department identified Mr. Herr for appointment as special counsel. This morning, President Biden's personal counsel called Mr. Lausch and stated that an additional document bearing classification markings was identified at the president's personal residence in Wilmington, Delaware.
So that's Merrick Garland announcing a new special counsel. We have special counsel mania in this country. Remember special counsel Mueller to investigate the fake Trump-Russia conspiracy theory?
I've got special counsel fever, Aaron. It's special counsel season.
But here's why we have a new special counsel for Biden is because, check out this headline. Hunter Biden accessed garage where dad kept his Corvette and classified material.
What? Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but with classified material?
And so here's Joe Biden showing off that garage where he kept not only the Corvette, but that classified material. Here's a shot of Joe Biden's garage where literally anyone could have broken into, where he was hiding classified documents. Spoiler alert, Hunter Biden is listed as the owner of this house and even lists this address on his driver's license. And here's a shot of Joe backing in.
You think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. So I'm excited about it.
Why does he have one single classified document in his Corvette, his garage? Because didn't they find documents plural at the other places?
Oh yeah.
We just had one here at this garage. I wonder what was on it.
But don't worry, everybody. Joe Biden says he's got it all under control. Here he is.
Mr. President, classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
Let me, look, I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Okay, so it's not like you're sitting out in the street. But
he just said it was in your garage, Mr. President.
It's locked, though. It's locked.
We weren't worried that you didn't lock it. Did you lock it? Did you lock it good? Did Hunter on his way out?
Anyway.
It was in a locked garage.
Yes, as well as my Corvette. But as I said earlier this week.
I want to focus on this Corvette, if I may. This is a sweet Corvette. It's not a Corvette. This Corvette's safer than most classified documents.
And the Corvette's locked, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's locking that Corvette.
People know I take classified documents and classified material seriously.
There you go, everybody. Don't worry about it.
Seriously, as a cherry Corvette from...
I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review. As part of that process, my lawyer has reviewed other places where documents from my time as vice president were stored, and they finished the review last night. They discovered a small number of documents of classified markings in storage areas and file cabinets in my home and my personal library. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn Center. The Department of Justice was immediately, as was done, the Department of Justice was immediately notified, and the lawyers arranged for the Department of Justice to take possession of the document.
There was this news this week of the FAA outage, like 10,000 plus flights all at the same time, simultaneously offline. People stranded, days, weeks, disrupted, families trying to get to see each other, can't see each other. They missed their vacations. And it's due, allegedly, to a guy, little guy, worker bee, little Dilbert guy, and he uploaded the wrong file and it took the whole thing offline. Oh, golly geez, that happened. It's an accident. It's incompetence. Sorry about that. Won't happen again. Except the next day, across a dotted line over in Canada, same thing happens. So is somebody probing us? Someone testing our fences? Is someone testing our defenses and the reactive time of taking down infrastructure? Possibly. And might that fit in with a great reset agenda?
Hey, welcome to Prep Life. Let's talk about the FAA. You guys saw this in the national news. 10,000 flights shut down. It's the first time in history this has ever happened because of a software glitch, and the second time in the country's history since September 11th of 2001 that we've shut down all airlines, grounded them because of a software glitch. According to a more deeply seated report, one software engineer transferred one file and it shut down 10,000 flights. Now, they identified this about 24 hours prior to the actual shutdown because they were trying to reboot the backup system, but it failed. Ironically, Canada faced the same thing the following day, but according to the Department of Transportation, as released in a press conference, this was not terrorist related. They haven't ruled it out, but I don't buy that an entire system's transportation was shut down because of a software glitch, and then the following day, Canada went through the same glitch. Just so happens. Herein lies the problem with our country right now. We're putting all our eggs in one basket for the sake of efficiency, optimization. And so this analog approach where we have a contingency, a backup, doesn't exist. We talked about it before on the show about the power grid and the power stations vulnerabilities across the country. 55,000 of them. If 9 to 12 of them were attacked, according to a report from the U.S. government, then it would shut down the power supply to the country for up to 18 months. That's pretty scary, guys. So, the things that we teach in self-reliance is about understanding that all the things that you lean on because of this social collaboration and agreement of outsourcing everything, you better be prepared and start insourcing some of that, because if you depend on that system solely, you're setting yourself up for failure.
We also have the creation of a new criminal class in America. 40 plus million new felons were created overnight with the stroke of a pen, or maybe they used ChatGPT over there at the ATF to write a law. Yes, the ATF apparently now passes laws that make 40 million American gun owners criminals, felons, federal criminals in 120 days. So either become a criminal or register thy firearms. So we're going to have to start learning more about the Second Amendment and keep up with these crazy folks who want everybody to be disarmed and only them to have the guns. I don't know if they've earned our trust to that level.
So the ATF posted their final rule on stabilizer braces.
The government is putting new restrictions on guns with accessories known as stabilizing braces.
As WDRB's Lindsay Allen explains, it means millions of gun owners could be breaking the law if they don't act within the next 120 days.
And this is the particular gun we're talking about. It's a pistol with a stabilizing brace, but come next week, it's going to be called something different and subject to new rules.
This accessory is what they're calling a stabilizer.
It's those new rules Crestwood Gun Range CEO Barry Laws is trying to inform his customers about, even putting it on a sign at the entrance to his store.
So you're going to have millions of people becoming essentially criminals for not complying.
On Friday, the ATF finalized a new regulation which will reclassify guns with stabilizing accessories as short-barreled rifles, not pistols. That means these guns will require a federal license to own. Owners have a few options. They can register the guns, remove the stabilizing brace, or surrender the gun to the ATF. The rule goes into effect once it's published in the Federal Register, which is expected to happen sometime next week. The Department of Justice is giving owners the next 120 days to comply. The change is part of the gun strategy President Biden announced in 2021.
And before I get into this, I want you to realize that there are millions of people that have these braces on their guns right now because the ATF initially said that they were legal. Now they're changing their minds. Now they're saying that people with braces on their guns must register them within 120 days from when the final rule appears in the Federal Register. The posting on the ATF website reads like this. This rule is effective the date it is published in the Federal Register. Any weapons with stabilizing braces or similar attachments that constitute rifles under the NFA must be registered no later than 120 days after date of publication in the Federal Register, or the short barrel removed and a 16-inch or longer rifle barrel attached to the firearm, or permanently remove and dispose of or alter stabilizing brace such that it cannot be reattached, or the firearm is turned into your local ATF office, or the firearm is destroyed. The proposed rule implemented a standard called Worksheet 4999, which used a point system to determine if a gun featuring a pistol brace would be classified as a short-barreled rifle. The ATF chose a different direction, however, and will now classify virtually every pistol with a brace as an SBR. Remember, millions of people have these braces on their guns. This new rule, which isn't even a law, but has the consequences of being a law, asserts that any weapon that is designed, redesigned, manufactured, or modified to be fired from the shoulder will now legally be an SBR. There is also the possibility that if a firearm only features a surface area that could permit it to be fired from the shoulder, then it may fall under the definition of an SBR. The ATF will consider any pistol with a length of pull equivalent to that of a rifle to be an SBR. Further, the addition of an optic on a pistol that requires eye relief in the same fashion as a rifle will be an SBR. So essentially, simply putting an optic on a pistol will likely change it from a pistol to an SBR. Here's what's even crazier. They're going to study how weapon manufacturers market their guns to determine if adding a particular device to the gun makes it an SBR. And oh, it doesn't stop there. They're also going to consider how the shooting community uses the weapon and could change classifications even if individual shooters use it as the manufacturer intended. Once again, I want you to remember, the ATF told us that these braces were legal to put on our guns. And now, overnight, they're now illegal unless you register them with the ATF or destroy the gun. It doesn't take a genius to see how this is a de facto gun registration. So now millions of guns that were once not on a registration will now have to be forced to be on a registration, or you become a felon.
And last but not least, we have a special guest tonight. We have, after 2 years of talking about this topic, we have the truth about Wuhan We have a whistleblower coming tonight, Dr. Andrew Huff, a former vice president at EcoHealth Alliance who worked for Peter Daszak.
Once I start to see under the hood and I actually read the technical manual, so the big revealing moment for me is that we have this big project, or had this big project at EcoHealth Alliance called PREDICT. PREDICT was funded by the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, and we were being paid to go collect coronavirus samples globally. And my boss, Dr. Peter Daszak, was running around telling the world that we were going to predict and prevent the next pandemic with this work that we were doing. But once I was actually brought onto the project and I read all the technical manuals, I realized, like, this is all a bunch of BS. This is pseudoscience. There's no way that we can actually accomplish the things that we're telling everybody to the tune of millions of dollars. And I even privately approached my boss. I'm like, this sort of looks like pseudoscience. I don't know what the heck you're telling everyone here. And I did it very professionally and away from everyone else. And I was just trying to get a sense of what was going on. But the more and more of the meetings and benefits and fundraisers that I went to, I couldn't really believe that they were getting people to pay for this. And this combined with my boss just being sort of a psychopath, I determined that towards my end of my employment at EcoHealth Alliance, I decided to leave, and I look back into the happiest day of my life. I never thought EcoHealth Alliance would ever become anything, because I left EcoHealth Alliance in 2016. The pandemic doesn't happen until 2019. I went on to go be a professor, and that was fine there. And then I went off to be a tech executive in Silicon Valley. And I did fine at both those places and never thought anything about EcoHealth Alliance. I'm like, oh, those people are just going to keep selling those people their snake oil. And then, they're going to be going down that path and it's never going to amount to anything. Well, boy, I was wrong.
Right now, let's kick off tonight's event with Luke Rudowski. You're going to see not pigs in the mud. Don't make that joke. There are some people stuck in the mud. There's some other people trying to assist. There may or may not be appreciation in that assistance, and then they might get a little pushy. Let's see. Let's kick off with Luke Rudowski of wearechange.org and thebestpoliticalshirts.com.
Talk about a sticky situation, and even though the cops were slow, they still got Greta Thunberg.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.